In this video, I'm going to show you how to create two different mini paintings. We will be using a really small piece of paper like this, piece of watercolor paper. The first style that we're going to be doing is one that we call atmospheric perspective, okay? And this resource is attached for you in Google Classroom so that you can refer back to. And our other mini painting is going to be a night sky, and we're going to be working on them at the same time, okay? So first off, we're going to get started with this one called atmospheric perspective. Sometimes you might also hear it called aerial perspective, but it's a way that we create depth in the background, okay? So let's take a look at this example where we have layers and layers of these mountain ranges going back. With the ones that are closest to us are really dark, and then as it goes back, the layers overlap behind one another, and it fades back. So we're gonna do something similar to this for our first painting, okay? So I'm gonna show you how to get set up with this. Now, the thing about this style of painting is we can't do it all at once. That's why we're gonna be working on two different paintings at once while we wait for things to dry. So I am going to activate my watercolors by either taking my clean water and putting it in here, or I'm just going to take my spray bottle and lightly spritz. So the first thing you need to decide for your atmospheric perspective drawing, is you need to determine what color you want to use, okay? You can use any color. You do not need to use the color that I am using. But I am gonna go ahead and I'm going to be using I'm gonna do a mix of blue-green. So I first put my clean water in here, and then I'm going to add a little bit of blue. And then rinse out my brush, clean water. I'm gonna add some blue-green. Okay. Now, for this first one, we want this to be super, super, super light. So I'm actually going to add significantly more water to it. Now I can just kind of do this, or I can also take my little squirt bottle and add a little bit more water into that too, if that's what I need. So this first color is going to be so light that you almost can't, it almost just looks like a very, very light tint of the color, okay? So you want to make sure that you have enough color on this first one, because we're just going to paint this entire background. Now, one thing that I like to do first, just to kind of activate and stretch this paper, is once again, take that little water bottle and just kind of spritz the background of the paper. Not a lot. Like I only did like 3 or 4 sprays there. So then I'm going to take this brush and I'm just going to fill the entire paper. So I'm going to go back and forth. Now, we don't want it to look like there are lines, okay? So as we do this, hold your paintbrush like you would hold a pencil. You can rotate the paper as you need to, but we just want to have a nice solid wash, okay? Filling up the entire thing. Okay, so once I have that solid in there, it might look on the camera here, it might look as if you can't even see that it's a different color, but I promise you that it is, and it's very, 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 very light. You can kind of see that there, okay? So once you're done with that, you're gonna put that one over to the side, and you're gonna grab your other piece of paper, and we're going to start by making a night sky, okay? So I'm gonna rinse my brush, and I'm gonna start with this one. We're gonna be doing a lot of wet and wet for this technique. So I'm gonna activate my paper with a little spray bottle of water. And when we're thinking of our night sky, it's kind of like the nighttime is pushing out the sunlight. So I'm gonna start with my lightest colors. So in this case, I'm going to be using yellow to start with. Now, we will be layering on top of this later. So you need to start very, very lightly. Okay, so I already have this wet. I'm gonna get my yellow in here to thin it out. And I'm just gonna start by kind of mapping a little bit of yellow in, okay? Now it's really important when you do this on the paper that you aren't scrubbing the paper. I'm hardly touching the paper. Here in a second, I'll show you what happens if we do scrub our brush on that paper. We'll actually ruin it. So I'm gonna just fill in a couple of things here. And now I'm going to add a little bit of orange to my yellow. So I'm gonna rinse, clean, add a little bit of orange. And now we're going to start to see the colors blend and kind of spray together. Nice and light, kind of looks like little fireworks here. So now as I go up, I'm going to continue adding color to this. So I'm going to rinse my brush, but this time before I mix colors, I'm actually going to take my clean water and I'm just going to paint with the water so I can continue that wet and wet technique. That color will bleed a little bit, and that's fine. Okay, so now I'm just gonna add a little bit of red to this orange, keeping it nice and thin, and whew. It's okay to kind of bring those colors down a little bit more. And one of the things about watercolor is you can't control it, and that's kind of the cool thing. Okay, now you might decide, well, I want that to be a little bit darker in some areas, and like I said, we'll be able to add more layers later on. So don't worry about getting too dark right now. All right, so now I'm going to start with a little bit of purple. So now when I start using this purple, I'm going to kind of start bringing it down a little bit. Do not overdo it though, okay? We don't want to mix things back and forth, back and forth. Otherwise, we're just going to have a muddy mess of colors. So I'm out of color, so I need to add a little bit of water first. All right, so now I'm ready to start adding a little bit of blue. So this will kind of help start to give us that idea of kind of a night sky, just a bit, but we're not quite there yet. Okay, so it's still not quite there. You can see where some of these areas are really, really pooling up with water because I got a lot there. So just be careful. So now with this, I am ready to actually add in some black. And black is a very powerful color, so we don't need a lot of it because we don't want it to overtake everything. So I'm gonna really kind of water this down because we will be layering over this a lot more later. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna start just kind of mapping in that color just a little bit, okay? Don't do it too much. Just let the colors blend together on their own. Okay, so I don't want to do much more to this right now because I don't want to overwork my colors, okay? But then I'll just take this over to the side very, very carefully, trying not to move that color. You can kind of see as I'm picking this up, it's kind of shifting a little bit. So you have to keep this flat, okay? But we'll get back to this later once it's dry. Now, one thing I do want to show you to not overwork your paper. So when I say overwork your paper, that means you take a color and you just go over top of it over and over again. Okay, so you might just be painting, 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 painting. And what eventually is going to happen is your paper is going to wear out. And it can wear out so much that you actually create a hole in the paper. But one of the most common things that you'll get is the paper will kind of start to ball up, okay? So right now you can see I'm really scrubbing with my paintbrush, okay? I'm not using it as a paintbrush should be used at all, okay? But you see those, all those little paper pieces? That is not good. We don't want that. And what eventually will happen, I'm telling you, is you can see my brush has all those little paper flecks in it, which is not good at all. But eventually what will happen is you will just put a hole right in that paper. So you cannot overwork it. Otherwise, we're just gonna have a sloppy mess. So please don't do that. See, look, now I have a hole, okay? So light layers, okay? So that will kind of be your step one. We'll show you what to do in the next part when both of these paintings are more dry.